And we are back. Evan, it's Dr. J. How we doing today, man?
Pretty
Happy July
good.
3rd.
Happy July 4th weekend.
Yes, you as well. Excited. I'm working all day seeing patients, but tomorrow I will take the day off, and I had a good weekend. How was your weekend so far?
Good. It's been great, man.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, just so you know, I thought we always typically start our day talking about food and kind of what we had for breakfast. I really haven't eaten breakfast yet. I'm doing a little fasting thing, but I can give you a little hands-on. My wife made this for me, which is great. So I got a little lid on it. So we got pasture-fed pork and then some nice fresh scrambled eggs, pasture-fed eggs. So this is waiting for me till about the noontime hour. So I'm getting a little 16-hour intermittent fasting going on here. So I am rocking it. And that kind of dovetail into our podcast today on intermittent fasting. But before we dig in, how you doing, man?
I feel good. I was going to ask you about eggs. You're doing eggs, no problem?
Yeah, I do eggs, no problem. I mean, they're pasture fed, and I typically do my yolk soft. My wife does scrambled. So if she's doing them, I'll just say, just take off what, make enough for you. And then I'll just take a little bit extra. So she doesn't have to do two different pans, but I like mine either poached or just the yolk intact.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. I got a little sparkling mineral water here to keep my throat in line.
Yeah, I've got some matcha here. My throat, I woke up a little scratchy.
Matcha.
The weather's been weird here, so this matcha is helping me.
Matcha. Love it. Cool. Well, we talked about pre-show, talking about intermittent fasting. This is a big topic. I'm a huge fan of it. I do it in ways that make sense, that's practical. There's fasting just for the sake of fasting, not eating for, let's say, a couple days, maybe even a week or so, where you're keeping the calories, let's say 100 to 200 calories per day, and you're getting more, just the minerals in there, maybe some broth and such. To help with some of the benefits that may happen with fasting. My opinion, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of fasting. I know Jimmy Moore likes it. My opinion, it takes energy to run your system. So I'm not a fan of shorting the amount of calories that your body needs per day. Your body, your Krebs cycle, and your mitochondria need nutrients to run. And I want to make sure those nutrients are there. So one of the key components with intermittent fasting successfully is whether it's a 16/8 or an 18/6, right? 16 or 18 being the time you're fasting, the 6 or 8 being the time, the window you're actually eating under. I'm a big fan of getting enough calories in that time frame that you're actually eating to sustain your body. So if I need 2,500 calories per day, I want to make sure that I'm getting enough calories. That's really important because that's the benefit that you get is you get that 16 to 18 hour window like this where all the fasting happens. And that's where you really get the insulin sensitivity up, which is great. You also get the cellular autophagy happening where you're recycling a lot of proteins, which do have anti-aging effect on your telomeres. And then you have that 6 to 8 hour window, whether it's at 2 to 8 p.m. or let's say 1 to 9 or 12 to 8, that's where all your calories are consumed. So when you're doing a fast, let's say like the master cleanse kind of fast where you maybe just getting a tiny bit of maple syrup in there, maybe a little bit of minerals to prevent any electrolyte issues, that has some benefits for people that have severe gut issues that they just decrease a lot of their inflammation by not getting any exposure to food. But it's not good long-term, in my opinion, for your metabolism because you are decreasing nutrients. Maybe some benefits are people that are severely insulin resistant because then they just get no food. So that can help with insulin sensitivity. But then what are you going to do afterwards after you break that fast? So again, there's fasting where there's ultra low calorie, not good in the long term. Are some benefits though. And then we have intermittent fasting, which can play into people that are already relatively healthy. It can be a good modality to add in maybe once or twice a week or every now and then once your hormones and your blood sugar are already in good shape.
Let's talk for a brief minute about water fasting, juice fasting. These are two other things that people do. I had a guy message me the other day. I think it was on Twitter. He said, "Hey, I'm about to break my 7-day water fast. Any tips?" And I was like, whoa, first, I would never recommend a 1-week water fast to start. Most people are so nutritionally depleted. They're so deficient in vitamins and minerals and trace nutrients that a water fast is just too intense on the modern person, especially due to all the stress we've got. And then juice fasting, you've got people who are going to places, even in Austin. I know it's super trendy there where you've got people buying these 6 or 7 day juice fast. However, a lot of the times it's not even organic. So you're getting probably a nice dose of some glyphosate. Some companies are doing organic green juices, but even then, I remember working with people who would go from a conventional diet, eating fast food, and then they would go on a 7-day juice fast or a juice cleanse, and they think that that's a good strategy. And I really don't. What's your take on water and or juice?
Great question. So the benefits that I see people that get from a water fast is, number one, if your diet's just total crap, if you're just incredibly insulin resistant, diabetes, lots of issues, lots of gut issues, there may be some benefit there because you just give your digestive system a whole break. Huge break. You're just giving just enough water to stay hydrated. Ideally, you're going to make sure within the water there's enough minerals so that you're not getting any hyponatremia. I mean, there's no way you're going to be getting enough potassium or minerals, so you'd have to make sure there's some kind of electrolyte solution that you're drinking. But the benefits are going to be no stress on the gut. You may be sipping some bone broth if you're doing something that's modified, or you may have an electrolyte trace mineral solution that you're drinking. But the benefit is if you're severely insulin resistant, you can reverse that right away, which is nice. And then you give a massive break on the digestive tract. So if your digestion's really terrible, it can really help give it a break. But outside of that, those are the major benefits. I'll let you kind of talk, and then we'll hit it again.
Well, so what about duration though? Like if you were going to promote that, what would be the duration? Surely not a week.
I mean, a few days, a weekend, maybe a good start. People that are severely insulin resistant, like the master cleanse, where you're maybe just adding a tiny bit of sugar in there, so you're preventing a drop in, severe drops in blood sugar, may be beneficial. I'm not a big fan of those kinds of cleanses. I've heard of doctors that have done it and they've had good results, but the problem is it's unsustainable. So again, the goal would be to come back into like kind of a paleo template or a really good macronutrient template with actual real food. Now you may break it. Sorry, I get some bubbles here from my LaCroix. I want to. All right. So if you break that though, you'd want to start breaking it with some kind of liquid food. It could be a broth, or it could be a gentle soup, or it could be some kind of a smoothie that's just really easy to digest. So you're easing things back into the digestive system. That's number one. The biggest issue, you have to ease back into food anyway. So I'm a bigger fan of just making that change with food anyway. The only time I would say maybe we should do a modified type of diet or modified type of solid food diet is if people have severe digestive issues. Then I would just work on doing green juices, bone broth, maybe free form amino acids. So I kind of break everything into its individual constituents, right? So the fatty acids are as easy to process as possible, maybe from MCT oil or coconut oil. The proteins are going to be from free form amino acids, so they're already easy to break down. Maybe we add in some extra minerals from a really good green juice that's organic, of course, without the fruit. And then we make sure, enough electrolytes and minerals are in there. So that's how I would do it in my perfect world. If someone has severe gut issues, I would try to do it that way. And some people may want to move and do a water fast to start with if they have severe issues where that's not working. So that may be a good first start moving into what I'm saying. But I predict that most people are going to be able to do what I'm saying and probably do better because they're going to get enough calories. Because when you're not getting enough calories, you're sending stress signals to your body to turn down the thyroid hormone. So you're going to have more reverse T3 and lower thyroid hormone when you start going lower calorie. So that's the reason why I don't like that, because you're actually creating a yo-yo diet effect. So then when you start adding food back in, your metabolism will be a little bit weaker. The goal, the reason why, or the goal behind doing that would be that the inflammation reduction on your gut and the improvement with insulin resistance outweighs the kind of yo-yo slowing of the metabolism effect. I think you could get both. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate, pros and cons for each. So severe insulin resistance, severe gut issues may be a benefit for a few days to a week-long fast under medical supervision with electrolytes and maybe some support there for blood sugar. Again, my version, if we're going to do some kind of modified fasting, is intermittent fasting, making sure ideally bone broth, minerals, green juice, free form amino acids, easy to digest fatty acids are in there. And that would be a really good way to do it. And then maybe have one solid meal at night. So most of the day is liquid and easy to process, one solid meal at night. And that's something that Ori Hofmeckler, the author of the Warrior Diet, talks about too.
Yep. Let's break down the juice a little bit. It's kind of a generic term now, like a juice fast or like a green juice. I'm more than likely going to promote more like a smoothie than a juice. Because if we're talking about juicers, typically those are going to be stripping away the fiber. What's your take on that, where we're pulling away fiber versus us blending something like a handful of veggies and maybe a little bit of low glycemic fruit with that?
Yeah, it totally depends on what the patient's problem is. So if they're having issues with digestion, that fiber may be an issue for them. So by
Really?
stripping away that fiber, that may help with the bloating and just give them all those nutrients without any of the fiber, which may create a lot more improvement with some of those digestive symptoms. So it just depends. I like the stripping the fiber away for people that are really having a lot of digestive issues. And frankly, these are the people that you're going to be doing that with anyway.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yep. For
So
sure.
that would be the major benefit, is just giving the digestive system more of a break.
And you'd still be low sugar with that. You're not talking about a green juice where it's going to be loaded with apple juice and all sorts of that, where it's 30 grams of sugar per 8 ounce. There's a lot of crazy quote unquote green juices out there that are garbage. So just to clarify, we're talking mainly veggies here, low sugar in terms of our veggies. We're not talking about your store-bought green juice.
Exactly. So like some of the ones that I would do would be a kale, spinach, cucumber, celery, so that you get a lot of minerals from the celery. You get some cucumber, some spinach, some kale. And then if you want, you can add a little bit of beet in there, which has a lot of natural nitric oxide, NO2, which is a good vasodilator. And then depending on how you're doing metabolically, you may want to add in 1 carrot or 1 green apple to sweeten it up.
Yep.
Again, if you're insulin resistant, I would say no fruit at all. But if you're okay, 1 carrot and or 1 green apple.
Store-bought juices, there's a couple good ones. I've seen Suja. They've got a couple of low sugar versions. They've also got insanely high sugar versions, 30 to 40 grams per like a 12 ounce. And then I've also seen some Sujas. They're cold pressed organic that you can get, I believe, like 3, maybe 4 grams for an entire bottle of sugar. So you really just got to take a closer look at the label. What about you? Do you know any other store-bought brands?
Yeah, you just got to look at Whole Foods. I bought a couple yesterday when I was there. I just look for organic. That's very important, because if you are doing juicing, you are going to get a massive concentration of nutrients, which is great, but you'll also get a massive concentration of pesticides too.
Oh yeah.
So that's why you got to be very careful. Like you alluded to earlier, it's got to be organic because of the pesticides. You'll get a ton there. So just look for the non-starchy kind of green ones. That's going to be the best. Kale, spinach, broccoli, collards, cucumber, celery, and then I like a little bit of beet. It makes it look kind of blood red, but it gives that extra bit of nitric oxide, which is great for vasodilation too.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's one that Starbucks carries. I believe it's called Evolve, but for one, I think it's high sugar, and I believe it's not organic. So definitely do your good research. Don't just assume if it says cold pressed juice, it's healthy, because you can destroy, even though we're trying to reverse insulin resistance, you can destroy yourself even more if you go on a 6-day binge of 40 grams of sugar.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a cup of carrot juice, that has more sugar than a Coke. Now, I'm not trying to say that that the Coke's better, but either way, there's a whole bunch of sugar there, a lot of nutrition, but also a lot of sugar. I know the Gerson people like that, but in my opinion, it's a little bit too much sugar for most people, especially if they aren't exercising as much. So I'd rather sweeten with 1 carrot, sweeten with a carrot, sweeten with a green apple, like a little bit of flavor, and then kind of do your staples regarding the greens. And then if you want to add a little bit of flavor, you can juice a lime in there, or you can also add in a piece of ginger. That can give it a little bit of spice.
How about a little bit of apple cider vinegar?
Of course, that's always great. Apple cider vinegar is great because it's got the acetic acid, so it lowers the pH a little bit, which is great. It's got the acetic acid will help mobilize minerals better. And it will also flush out guanidine, which is a byproduct of protein metabolism.
Well, when I chatted with Marcola, he was talking about all the cool research on apple cider vinegar supporting mitochondria as well. And he didn't know why he felt so good sipping on that, during his fast or kind of his ketotic states. He felt great with it. He's like, wow, figured out it supports mitochondria. So that's cool too. When we're working with people that typically that are overweight, there's usually issues with fatigue and likely mitochondria. So kind of double bonus there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the really good benefit. So looking at it, there's a couple modified ways we can do it. You can do the apple cider vinegar. You can do the green drink. You can do those healthy modalities, really get the nutrition in there. And then we'll go into some of the fasting components, but there's this compound known as mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin. It's a cool little name, little tongue twister there. But that has some effects on cellular growth. So by doing intermittent fasting, we can decrease mTOR, and it's like a slingshot, right? So if here's mTOR at baseline, and if we decrease mTOR by doing some intermittent fasting, we decrease it, but then as soon as we break that fast, mTOR pops back up. So part of the benefits of intermittent fasting is we decrease mTOR for a short period of time, creating this slingshot-like effect. Part of mTOR decreasing is not having the methionine, right? And methionine's an amino acid. It's a good amino acid, but it can be a little bit inflammatory for some people when done excessively and too much. Methionine's really high in muscle meats. So by decreasing the muscle meats and doing some fasting for, let's say that's 16/8 or 18/6 time frame where you're fasting for 16 to 18 hours, you're decreasing the methionine ideally, and then you can utilize breaking that fast, let's say at 2 o'clock that next day, you're adding some of those healthy meats back in, but then boom, then you increase mTOR, which can then help with protein synthesis and healing. So that's some of the benefits that you get. Coffee's also helpful at that. Tea, or that matcha tea that you're consuming, has some effects on mTOR, some positive effects. And then also cancer. Of course, insulin resistance will drive mTOR too high because mTOR is good for cellular growth, right? But not so good if you're growing cancer cells, right? So part of the benefits of going ketogenic and going low calorie have that effects on lowering mTOR, but while at the same time may be beneficial for cancer too, right? That's why decreasing the insulin levels can have a beneficial effect for cancer and such.
Yeah, you and I were doing some research before this, and we came across Howard Hughes Medical Institute. They're designing drugs now that are blocking mTOR, and they define it as a molecule that helps drive the growth of many tumors. So when we're talking about intermittent fasting, ketogenic diets, you're kind of cycling your protein. You're not just doing super, super high protein, which can be a problem sometimes in the paleo space, is people just over consuming protein. You're really cranking up that mTOR. Like you said, you're enhancing the growth of cells, but if those are tumor or cancer cells, that's not good. So once again, just because it's fresh in my mind, when I chatted with Mercola, he said he's only doing like 2 ounces of grass-fed beef. Like that's it. He's not doing a full steak. He's like baby stepping. He's also interested in longevity and that whole aspect. And he's a little bit older than myself. And so I still want to maintain and build more muscle, where now he's kind of transitioning. He wants to keep his muscle, but he's more interested in longevity as well. That's what you can achieve by intermittent fasting, ketosis. All of these things are tied in. We're really talking about the same thing, just different pieces of this puzzle and how it's all connected.
Is he doing 2 ounces of protein a day total for the whole day, every day?
I'm pretty sure that was it.
I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not a huge fan. There's lots of studies looking at protein intake and lots of benefits on insulin resistance, lots of benefits on just your diet, because protein is so satiating to the body that you get that better leptin signaling and ghrelin signaling. So your appetite's more in check. You're able to put on more muscle. Lots of studies with protein intake and longevity. Again, typically 1.2 grams per kilogram. So what does that really mean? It's about 0.5 gram per pound of body weight. So I weigh 210 pounds. So
I'm not 100% sure. I may have to go listen back and see what he said. I'm pretty sure that's just for animal meats. Now I know he's doing a huge smoothie in the morning where he's doing avocados, he's doing cacao, he's probably doing maybe some plant-based proteins. But in terms of animal protein, I believe, it was maybe like a 2 ounce portion, unless, now I think that's what he said when he's cooking. So maybe he's getting meal delivery, or if he's got a chef cooking for him, I'm not quite sure what happens. So don't 100% quote me.
Yeah, I heard him on Dave Asprey talking about how he doesn't really even eat dinner. Now, I think dinner's good to eat. I think that's really good to eat, especially if you're intermittent fasting. It would be the breakfast and early lunchtime you'd want to miss. And the reason why is because if you're sleeping, from 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. to 6 or 7 or maybe 8 a.m., you're already fasting. So it's easier to piggyback on top of a fasting window. So that's why if you're going to do the fast, you much rather miss breakfast and early lunch, because then you're piggybacking on that 10 hour of sleeping, and then you just add an extra 6 to 8 hours on top of that, and then you have a 16 to 18 hour fast window. So I like that aspect better. And then coming out of the fast around 1 or 2 o'clock and making sure you consume enough calories, then typically 2 meals, maybe 3. And what I do is if I'm going out to like, a nice steak restaurant like Saturday or Sunday, and I know I typically like to go out to eat a little bit earlier, like around 4 or 5, that morning I may have like a butter coffee and just sip on that all day. Because the benefit is you're having that modified protein fast, right? Decreasing the methionine, decreasing the muscle meat is what allows that mTOR to go downward and then spring back. So
Yeah.
I'll have that going out to dinner thing Saturday or Sunday, and I'll kind of just sip on some fat, low calorie though, just a couple hundred calories during that day. And then boom, then I'll go have a really good refeed, right? People in the health or paleo communities, when they go to binge, right, we call it a refeed. It just sounds a little bit more scientific. So we do a little refeed, but keep the gluten and the refined crap out. So just good healthy meats and good healthy vegetables, maybe some oysters, like a lot of that stuff, maybe 1 glass of a dry champagne, something like that. And that's kind of like my refeed, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job of explaining it. I just want to restate it back to you, though. Make sure we're hearing it right. When you're going intermittent fasting, you can still be doing plenty of fat, your MCTs, your coconuts. You could still be doing your avocados, etc. Not technically breaking that fast, not causing any spike of insulin that we're trying to avoid. So even though it's a fast, you could still be consuming calories throughout this fasting period, therefore reducing the stress on the body. It's not 100%. You're not touching anything food-wise or calorie-wise. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, there's a couple ways to do it. You can do it that way that I mentioned. You can upgrade it 1 level, and then you can add in 1 scoop of collagen, right? Because collagen's primarily going to be elevated in glycine, hydroxyproline, and proline. It's very low in methionine, relatively speaking. So a lot of that benefit of mTOR, that decreasing of the mTOR, primarily happens by restricting methionine, which is found in muscle meats. So if I have patients that are like, oh, I'm on the fence, I want to try doing a little bit of intermittent fasting, but let's say they have hormone and blood sugar issues, I want to get them more stable with that first. That's number 1. I want to make sure they don't have any blood sugar issues or adrenal or thyroid issues first. Make sure those are stabilized. But then if they want, butter coffee, collagen peptides, a little bit of MCT oil, and 1 scoop of collagen peptides, and then do that in your coffee, that's going to really decrease mTOR and then cause it to absolutely spring back.
Yep. Well said. So let's talk about who's a good fit, who's a good candidate for intermittent fasting. You hit on like the insulin resistance piece, people that have got a lot of gut issues, athletes, moms.
Yeah. So anyone I would just say that has stable blood sugar, their blood sugar is stable, meaning these aren't people that are just like, if they skip a meal, they're irritable, they're moody, they're just feeling really off. So making sure that piece is dialed in. And the reason why they feel off is primarily because they just don't have their hormones dialed in, whether it's their adrenals or their blood sugar, it's just not quite dialed in yet. So making sure the blood sugar and the thyroid components are good. Once that's good, then you can, I like the 16/8. It's pretty simple.
Yep.
Go to bed 10, 11 o'clock, maybe 12 o'clock. You're up at 7 or 8. You don't eat till 1 or 2.
So you and I came across a couple articles, pieces of literature talking about fertility and intermittent fasting. So for moms, people trying to conceive, I mean, I think it's still plausible that you could do it, but it is going to be stressful. I mean, if they're getting enough calories, they're getting enough fat, would you still recommend someone trying to conceive go for it? Or would you say, hey, don't restrict protein. Let's make sure you're getting maybe a breakfast, lunch, dinner, more of like a 2-3 square meal a day?
Yeah, I mean, you still shouldn't be restricting anything, right? So if I were to look at your daily kind of meal plan and we were to like go on Chronometer and throw it in there,
yep,
and we were to just see kind of where their nutrients are at the end of the day, it should still look the same as someone eating 3 meals a day, right? That's the key mistake most people make. It should still look the same. There should still be enough protein in there. There should still be enough fat in there. There should still be enough carbs. And then in general, of course, the calories should still be the same. That's the key that people make a mistake with on the intermittent fasting, is the calories still have to be adequate.
So it's really just a timing thing.
Yes.
Still may end up, if you put 2 people side by side on their macros, the macros may end up the same. It's just the timing that's really changing. But a lot of people mess it up, you're saying, and they're actually accidentally cutting calories. They're cutting protein. They're cutting their macros accidentally by intermittent fasting, just because that one meal or that compressed eating window, they're not actually getting everything back in that they should have. Is that right?
Yeah, you have to make sure, in my opinion, you have at least 2 times you eat. and that you get enough of those calories in there. Now, again, if you have digestive issues, right, and you need, let's say 2,500 calories and you're cutting your feeding window from 2 to 8, that means you need 2 meals in there to get those calories. So that means you need 1,250 calories per meal. That may be a little hard on someone's digestive system if they aren't in good shape. So I would also add the caveat, making sure your digestion is adequate. And then in general, I would not recommend any intermittent fasting if you're pregnant. It just doesn't make sense. I would, I'd want to make sure there is zero stress signal at all. And I would hope that all the insulin resistant stuff we've already addressed by just dialing in the carbs and getting the diet right. So when you're pregnant, you're actually something that's sustainable. I don't want to modulate anything. I want to make sure that food's coming in at a predictable pace throughout the day for the mother and the baby.
Yep. Love it. I think we hit everything. Are there any pieces that you wanted to hit that you didn't?
Yeah. So let's kind of summarize here. If we're going to use amino acids while we're trying to intermittent fast, we can do the butter coffee. We can do the MCT. MCT is great because of its effect on increasing ketosis and increasing mitochondrial function. So that's great.
Yep.
Collagen peptides are relatively low in methionine, high in glycine and glutamine and hydroxyproline and proline, so which is really, really good, and low in the methionine, which is great. It's the muscle meats that have that negative effect on mTOR. Making sure you get adequate calories in during that feeding window. And you can, number one, you can plan it. Like I kind of have a Saturday or Sunday where I know I'm going to go out to eat and kind of have a really cool meal, nice meal, kind of celebrate for the end of the week. And then I'll just kind of fast all day long. That's a really good place to be. My wife right now, being pregnant, she's hungry every 2 to 3 hours and she's eating really good. So for her, it's going to be a different ball game. That's why if you're pregnant, I think, eating every 3 to 4 hours and just making sure you're eating enough calories and protein. And she measures her blood sugar too. We do functional glucose tolerance testing to avoid any gestational diabetes. And she's on the sensitive side. If she does a little too much fruit or a little bit too much starchy carbohydrate, her blood sugar will creep up and it won't come back down as fast. So making sure the blood sugar stuff's dialed in is very important, because if you're pregnant, you may have, that starch aspect may be an issue. So 16 by 8 or 18 by 6 is a great window there. Making sure they're adequate calories, making sure you're not pregnant, making sure you don't have any severe blood sugar, thyroid, or adrenal issues. Number 2. Number 3, making sure your digestion's good, because if you're compacting the amount of calories for 3 meals into 2 and you have weaker digestive system going on, that may make it harder to break down those foods. So making sure the gut and the digestion's good. And then we talked about the fasting versus the intermittent fasting, pros and cons. In my opinion, complete fast is more severe and is not something, in my opinion, that's sustainable long-term. It's kind of a specific short-term kind of approach. Does have the yo-yo dieting effect where it does weaken the metabolism a bit. So anything that lowers calories, right, you gain weight back when you add the food back in. That's the yo-yo dieting effect. You weaken your metabolism, you add the calories back in. Now your body's a little bit weaker metabolically, so you put on a little more fat. So that's the big side effect with that.
Let's hit these questions. You ready for these?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Samuel said, if you drink bulletproof coffee in the morning, you don't eat till the afternoon, is that still considered intermittent fasting? We hit that. That would be a yes.
Yeah, that's intermittent fasting. Exactly.
Okay. Augie said, just started watching people with adrenal issues. What's your opinion on IF? I'll speak from firsthand experience. Justin and I've got clinical experience on this too, but my personal experience is, for me, intermittent fasting was actually destroying me. Maybe it's because I'm younger. Maybe my metabolism is faster than someone who's in their 50s or 60s with adrenal issues and I'm commonly working with. But for me, I had to eat more. And for me, just trying to condense that into intermittent fasting, it didn't work. So I was doing breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I was able to recover, of course, with additional support, healing my gut, adaptogens, etc. But for me, the adrenal intermittent fasting piece just didn't go well together. Justin, what's your take?
Same thing. Make sure the hormones are dialed in first. Remember, from an evolutionary perspective, how did this all work? Well, we had food, we killed a buffalo, we ate it until it was gone. And then there were periods without food, right? That's kind of where we were fasting. So it wasn't like our ancestors were saying, okay, like we have all this food, let's just not eat it for a couple of days, or let's just only eat it at the end of the day, right? That's kind of not the thinking. The thinking is food wasn't available. We fasted for short periods of time. We got food and we feasted, fasted, feasted. So I like to use that kind of sequencing and how we apply intermittent fasting. So don't do it every single day. I see a lot of people where their daily routine is to fast every day.
Yep.
And I just say, no, use it use it in a punctuated fashion, 1 or 2 times a week. And then starting out, do your intermittent fasting on days that are less stressful. Why? Well, because there's going to be less cortisol in your system. That's number one. Number two, the more stressed you are, the more you're going to need more nutrients to run the system. Dopamine, serotonin precursors, B vitamins, minerals to buffer the stress. Your Krebs cycle and your energy systems require nutrients. So why would you want to fast and avoid putting nutrients into the system? So do it on days that are less stressful to start with. That's a pretty good starting point.
I believe that's the same thing we said about ketosis too on previous podcasts. Is it's might need more carbohydrates, a little bit more starch on a more stressful day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good place to start it. Again, I'm not black or white on these issues.
Right.
These are the people that are going to benefit. You're relatively healthy, good blood sugar, right? You already do okay if you skip a meal. You're not going to be in dire straits. And then these are the people that want to avoid it, right? The pregnant women, the hormonal issues, the severe blood sugar issues. Here's how we start inching our way into it. 16/8 would probably be a good starting place. Then you can eat from like 12 to 8 o'clock. That's a really good starting place. Making sure there's an adequate amount of calories in there as well. And also making sure minerals and bone broth, and you can also do the green juice as well to get enough nutrients in there. Because we need about 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day. So you would need like 2 really big salads to get it all. So maybe a green juice would be helpful to get all those nutrients there.
Yep. Avocados too are a good source.
1 gram of potassium right there. One avocado. People don't know. Avocado has twice the amount of potassium that a banana does. But
I know.
I mean, people think, what's potassium? Oh, banana. Nope. Avocado, twice the amount.
Yeah. And without the sugar.
Without really any, maybe 1 or 2 grams of carbohydrate, very little.
Yep. You made me think of something. I lost my train of thought there. Oh, yes. Is that people want things in black and white? We're just giving you generalities. There's never going to be in black and white. This is always case by case. So don't take something and carve it into a Rosetta Stone. Justin said this or Evan said this. It will never exist that way.
It's a spectrum.
Yes.
It's a spectrum. Figure out where you're at on that spectrum and start there. Okay. Yep. Another person said, is snacking between meals never good? In my opinion, snacking before meals or in between meals is not good. Why? Because every time you snack, food produces little drops of insulin. Okay. The more insulin surges you create, when insulin's high, fat burning's low. Insulin high, fat burning low. Just how it is. So the more we can modify insulin by keeping the carbohydrates dialed into what your needs are. Okay. If you're lifting weights and you're already in good shape and you're active, you may be able to do 100 or 200 grams of carbohydrates a day without issue. If you're sedentary or you're insulin resistant, that may be 20 or 30 grams of carbs. So you dial in your carbs for what you need. You try to go at least 4 to 5 hours. So at hour 2 or 3, you're starting to kick into fat burning, right? So if you're eating every 2 or 3, then you're never really getting into fat burning. That's not a good thing. And then the only time I allow snacks for patients is we call them mini meals. So they should be appropriate amounts of protein, fat, and carbs, just, ratios, just a smaller amount. Yeah. So some people, let's say they eat lunch around 12 or 1, and then the time their family kind of gets together and has dinner, it's like maybe 7 o'clock. That's 7 hours. So maybe for them, they have like a nice little shake or a nice little Epic bar or something around 3 or 4, like maybe around 4 o'clock, just to get them to that 7 o'clock time. So they eat at 12, mini meal at 4, and then they eat their real meal at 7 o'clock. So a nice meal that kind of tied you over in between to get to the real meal.
Yep, well said. The second part of the question was better to eat fruits with meals instead. Typically, I mean, the ideology, we would say, yeah, if you're doing some fat, typically that would act as kind of a slow digest for the fruit, where if the fruit's by itself, it may spike your blood sugar a bit more. I've not personally tested it. I don't eat too much fruit beyond berries anyway, so I'm not really concerned about whether I'm eating a handful by themselves or with meals. What's your take, though?
Yeah, I mean, this person's probably coming from the context of meal combining, where they say fruit should be consumed by itself because of the enzymes needed for it and how fast it digests and processes. So that if you eat it with fats and proteins, that's going to hold up the digestion, leave it in the stomach longer, and maybe create like more gas or bloating issues. So I always tell patients, if you can handle fruit together, take it together. That tends to be the best way to do it. Take it with the food. If not, you can kind of eat your food, take enough enzymes and acids, and maybe do it like 20 or 30 minutes after your food is kind of like a dessert kind of thing. but I would really make sure enough enzymes or acids are there. And if you really notice that you get bloated or gassy with fruit while you're eating it with food, but by itself you do better, then there's probably some fructose malabsorption happening, and we got to work on the gut.
Yep. Well said. I also thought about bacterial overgrowth when you were saying that, where that may present problems too if you're doing fruit. Last question, then I'd say we wrap it up.
Yeah.
Could a long-term water fast, in parentheses weeks, cut down on your stomach's ability to produce sufficient acid for digestion? What do you think? I've got no additions on this.
Yeah, I mean, would it? Yeah, I mean, you would definitely decrease your stomach acid for sure. I mean, you need zinc, you need potassium, you need a lot of those nutrients to actually make stomach acid. So yeah, it's very possible it could decrease your ability, your body's ability to make it. That's why when you'd add it back in, you'd want to keep it as liquid and easy to process as you add it back in, and gradually ratcheting back up to solid food. I know I think it's True North up in Northern California, Dr. Goldhammer's clinic, they do a lot with water fasting. So if people are looking to get more info on that, they do it. They have an inpatient clinic where they actually monitor people. They may even put them on IVs and watch them and make sure they're on the right track doing it. So if you're going to do a water fast, though, like a long-term, more than just 2 days, and you have issues, you'd want to do it under medical supervision.
Cool. Well said.
Not a huge fan, but I've kind of gone over the reasons why it may be beneficial and helpful.
Right. Good job.
Well, anything else you want to touch upon, Evan? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think we did great. I mean, the starting point with people, the 16x8 is going to be the easiest. You can just look up your YouTube channel. There's more videos you've done on intermittent fasting. I think I may have done one, but you've inspired me. So I'm going to have to do more intermittent fasting videos. Maybe even just share my day. What does it even look like? How do you structure a day? Because when we're listening to it, I think sometimes people fall asleep halfway while they're listening to us because they just like the sound of our voices. And so I may need to show a video of like, what does this actually look like? How do you break your day down to do this? It's actually quite simple and allows you and I to have our brains functioning while we're working with our clients to keep our brains elevated. I mean, I feel so much better, when I am in a fasted state. So kind of pushing that lunch back a bit more, I really get a lot of good productive work done in those first few hours of the day compared to if I do a real heavy, big breakfast and break it, my brain, it does slow down a bit for digestion, which is normal. Your body's going to send the blood to the tummy. So it does make sense if you've got a real, a job that requires a lot of brain power that you may want to visit this. If you're a coder, computer programmer, people that really got to have your brain 100% dialed in, you're going to be in a much better place if you do this.
Yeah, I noticed the headaches too. If I go too long, like I skip lunch and I didn't eat till like 6 o'clock, and it was like probably a good 24-hour fast, but I got really bad headaches. Ooh. And I find that sometimes that can just happen from the minerals. So that's where really getting a good electrolyte support in your water, so you get the extra minerals that way, or you sip on a little bit of green juice, with the caveat of the ones that we mentioned, not the sugar-laden ones with the fruit. That can at least give you a little bit extra potassium and minerals and sodium and chloride, all those extra minerals you need. So that could be a side effect. And that's part of the reason why people on ketogenic diets get a lot of headaches, is they just don't get enough potassium. So making sure the minerals are there, and that's a kind of a little tip on how you could do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would you have done differently to prevent the headache if you just got so busy again you had to skip lunch? You would probably just have some electrolytes on board. Do you think you could avoid it?
I would just probably add some more electrolytes on board, and maybe add a couple sips of some green juice in there. Probably would have fixed it. And then also just making sure my fasting is on days that are less stressful. That tends to help too.
Yep. Well, and maybe adaptogens too. Could always have maybe had some extra ashwagandha in the tank or something like that may have helped you.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone asked about a green juice recipe. Honestly, nothing specific. I throw a cucumber or two in there. I threw kind of a bunch of kale, like a half bunch of kale in there, a couple of things of celery in there. I just kind of like take, an even amount, and I kind of just like create like a little lineup, and I just throw it in, next, throw it in, next, throw it in, make sure I get a cup worth. And then at the very end, I'll sweeten it with a, 1 carrot or a half to 1 green apple, and then maybe a little bit of lime or a little bit of ginger for a little bit of flavor. That's it.
Yep. Cool.
And I got a video coming up here on, I'm just looking at my board. I can tell I've written out. Yeah.
What's on that
fasting
board?
And hypothyroid. That's going to be done. I'm going to record this later on today. So I'm excited to put that video out. And I kind of talked about some of those gems that are in there in today's podcast, but I'll condense it down, and you'll have my little dry erase board behind me where we can really emphasize some points.
What's it titled? Hypothyroidism and intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting and hypothyroidism.
I'll be
coming,
I'll be watching
to a YouTube near you.
Cool.
All right, my man. Hey, happy 4th of July. You enjoy it, and we'll talk real soon.
You too. Take care.
You too.